a harmless habit that's actually really toxic? Story 1. Sweeping problems under the rug to keep the peace. Edit. Thank you for the award and upvotes. I didn't realize this would resonate with so many people. Story 2. Letting family get away with being shitty just because they're family. Not really a habit, I guess, but my life is so much better having cut the toxic ones out. Story 3. Self-deprecating humor. I was told by a therapist when I was going through a period of depression to avoid it, because you know it's a joke, but your brain does not. So it's just adding to the negative self-talk. Your brain is already dealing with them. Story 4. People who have an upset tone frequently but won't let their partner know what's up. Talked to my buddy about this recently, and the tone is wildly exhausting if you live with your partner. It stifles the house, makes someone guess why you're upset, and overall these people seem to lack any EQ. A tone can seem harmless, but when they have a tone for days on end and withdraw themselves, they're miserable partners. Story 5. Thinking. There is something wrong with asking for help and that you are lesser for it. This applies to everything from work, to personal issues, to everything. I'm Gen X, and we got independence shoved down our throats hard. I actually got in trouble for refusing help at work the other day. Story 6. Replaying fake arguments in your head so you're ready if they ever happen. Feels harmless, but it keeps you stuck in fight mode with people who aren't even there. Story 7. Habitual complaining and negative speech, use of harsh words and phrasing. Seems harmless or funny to many people. But we have increasing numbers of studies coming out showing that negative speech is processed by the brain. Much like violence, it has a slow burn toxic effect on the speaker and everyone who hears them. A lot of people need to understand that restraining the impulse to harsh and disparaging speech, unless really necessary, is nearly as important as restraining the impulse to violence. Story 8. Jokingly trash-talking people. You are actually insulting people, but doing it in a way that you can deny you are doing anything wrong. If the other person takes offense, they are the problem for not being able to take a joke and for being too sensitive. Story 9. Being a helicopter parent and saying, "If you got nothing good to say, don't say anything at all," has given us a generation of young adults who can't think for themselves and can't take criticism. Story 10. Raw-dogging long-haul flights. There's a social media challenge where people sit absolutely still on an 8-hour flight with no entertainment at all to test their resilience and willpower. But deep vein thrombosis is no joke. Story 11. Being late all the time. Yes, time blindness exists. But if you have to keep any kind of regular job to live, you can obviously be on time if you really need to be. Consistently being late sends a message that your time is more valuable than everyone else's. So many people are so blasé about it, but it feels so rude, and sometimes very much like a weird kind of power play. Story 12. Combine eating with something else like watching TV. Scrolling on your phone, reading you then start eating for no reason other than that our brain associates other stuff with food, and you now have to eat while watching TV or whatever. Story 13. Hear me out. When women say, "I'm fine," because you, me, and not some people, everyone knows she's brewing up some vitriolic terror in her mind, and there is no right way to handle it. You know she's not fine, but if you try to find out why she doubles down and then explodes, but if you walk away from the situation, even if you say, "I'm here if you want to talk," she's going to eat your heart out for not trying to see what's wrong. Ladies, please stop. Story 14. Sarcastic meanness in a relationship. Sarcasm is a high-level function of the brain. While both parties know logically that the cruelty means the exact opposite, the lower functions of the brain are still experiencing distress. It all banks up. If you are in a relationship, be sincere. Story 15. Not checking your confirmation bias. Really toxic in this age of outright lies and deceit, from corporations to politicians to media. You have to check the sources and keep an open mind at all times. Story 16. Bitching. Like, sure, we all need to let off steam once in a while, but people that think they don't have anything interesting to say, unless they are complaining, are doing a disservice to not only the people around them, but also their own mental health. Story 17. Knee-jerk telling people to forgive. I'm perpetually baffled at how hard and automatically, and absolutely people will push this, even with zero details about the situation. Person, yeah, that guy, he wronged me. Everyone, instantly, OMG, you gotta forgive. And then they launch into this oddly stock finger-wagging spiel about how holding a grudge will, like, imperil your very soul, so you gotta let it go, or it'll 100 no question eat you up inside. And really, you're just hurting yourself, etc., etc. again, even when there's zero evidence that's actually happening. Remembering you were mistreated holding a grudge? I find it baffling unto suspicious. There's something incredibly off about it. all of it. Story 18. Pretending everything will be solved if you work a bit harder. You have to take care of yourself first, and that should mean some downtime time for things you enjoy. Story 19. Thinking that it's perfectly okay for people to be tortured for eternity because they don't believe in your God. Especially toxic because it comes in a cluster of worldviews that results in voting for laws that harm people. Story 20. Overworking yourself. There's a mindset nowadays that we always have to be grinding or whatever, but humans weren't built for that and it will have negative effects on your life. Story 21. Eating garbage food all the time. I feel so much better when I eat more raw fruits and veggies, but I still have a bad garbage food problem. The convenience of it is so tempting. Story 22. Not picking up dog. I've had so many dog owners seem to think it's not a big deal, but for the person stepping in it. Trying to figure out how to clean your shoe without warning is a massive hassle. I literally have a mental picture of the 3 poops that I need to not step in when I am walking home from work tonight. 2 of them are in dark areas, so I need to memorize where not to step. Some of my limited mental energy for each day is tracking dog locations. Story 23. Hating yourself. It's not as self-contained as it seems. A lifetime of low self-esteem means that you make decisions to be with people for all the wrong reasons. Knowing that the person you're with thinks that they're trash shines a light on what they think about you. Story 24. When someone insists that you tell them something that you don't feel comfortable talking about, like please tell me, instead of respecting the fact that you may not feel comfortable talking to them about something personal or something that isn't your business to tell. Like they try to make it sound like you can trust them, but instead, they're just making you feel uncomfortable and annoyed and like they're trying to interrogate you. If someone doesn't feel comfortable talking to you about something personal, say, okay, sorry to pry make you uncomfortable. I'm here if you need anything from me. Story 25. You might think it's harmless to vent about other people and complain about the things people do that riles you up, because you might see it as blowing off steam or think you're in the right. So there's no trouble with saying the things you want to say, but from the listener's POV, you come off as a talker and an untrustworthy. If they hear you vent about a handful of other people, they'll put 2 and 2 together and may, most times accurately, realize you are also venting and talking about them too. You'll be labeled toxic before realizing why people might have stopped talking to you or listening to your complaints, vents, etc. Story 26. Thinking OCD levels of clean is a good thing. It's okay to leave a cup on the counter. It's okay to accidentally drop food. I don't want to live in a sterile house where every surface could have surgery performed on it, but also it must stay that way or you get screamed at. Hoarder home mess isn't okay, but a tiny bit of mess that you will clean up is fine. Source. My mother, who did not have OCD, but still threw a fit if the house wasn't a show home. We never even had guests much. Story 27. In-app purchases that are like 5. Time goes by a lil, and suddenly you spent 600 on a fictional character in Genshin Impact. I don't play the game, but it was a popular story on Reddit about a girls who spent 600 on a single character in Genshin Impact. Story 28. Trying to put a positive spin on everything, aka toxic positivity. Let people feel their feels, man. And everything absolutely does not happen for a reason. Story 29. Over-apologizing. It seems polite, but constantly saying sorry for things like asking questions or taking up space can hurt your confidence and make others take you less seriously. Try thank you instead, like thanks for waiting instead of sorry, I'm late. Story 30. Putting oneself down as if to say, oh, I'm so stupid, etc., can really add up and take its toll on one's self-esteem, confidence, and more. It's a toxic habit. Story 31. Spewing toxicity and blame as a coping mechanism. There is one thing to have a problem and address the problem respectfully, and there is another to beat each other up. Story 32. Being addicted to problems. Most people don't realize their friend who has a lot of drama is addicted to problems to give them a feeling of significance. Story 33. Not wanting to waste food when you are full, so you keep eating. I grew up with extreme poverty and only realized well into my 30s how unhealthy this mantra was to me and why I was actually eating, etc. Story 34. Friends who can't communicate BC their bad texters or shy really ends up hurting the relationship BC their lack of care or response or priorities is really inconsiderate behavior towards the other person. I would argue that being the notably late friend also falls into this category of inconsideration. Story 35. Not bothering to get dressed on each and every day when there is no external requirement to leave the house. Increase how bad it is by not bothering to shower on those days either. Feels a lot like what's the point but is so detrimental to mental health. Obviously very different to it just happening occasionally. Story 36. Staying silent instead of speaking up. Coping that by staying silent, you are being the bigger person or another similar lie. No. Speak up, even if it is not comfortable. Story 37. Focusing on your kids while completely neglecting your marriage. Your kids will someday move away, and it will be just the 2 of you. Don't let yourselves get to an identity crisis when you're an empty nest and the only thing you had in common for 20 years was kids. Spouse comes first, period, then kids. Not to say your kids don't matter or they don't need you, but putting kids above spouse blows my mind. Learn to tell your kids no. Story 38. Always putting off talks, or not committing truly in a relationship, not joining bank accounts, not talking about kids, not moving in together, etc. Just general passive avoidant behavior, stagnating the next step of your relationship. Story 39. Asking your partner what you need to do instead of figuring it out and doing it on your own. Housework, social situations, work, life in general. Turning your partner into your manager can slowly erode your relationship. Story 40. Should have called this "What is your biggest perceived fault?" Seeing as it seems 99 of people just say whatever is relevant to themselves. Shockingly. Story 41. Rationalizing bad behavior. It always starts small, but at some point, many years later, people start to justify causing harm just for fun. Edit a typo drove me mad. Wrote tarts instead of starts. Story 42. Over-explaining things or giving too much advice. I'm guilty of it, and I realize people aren't looking for answers, they're just expressing their emotions. Story 43. Too much caffeine leads to many unhealthy things. Less sleep, dependence on caffeine, some are too high-strung on it, some are gatekeepers on it, kidney stones, weight gain, or less nutrients if mixed with other things like sugar and creamer. Checking your phone right after waking up. This sets your mind in reactive mode from the very start of the day. You react to what others have posted instead of gathering your thoughts. Story 45. Procrastination may seem harmless but creates stress over time. Delaying tasks makes them seem bigger in your mind, leading to anxiety and decreased productivity. Story 46. Comparing yourself to others on social media. This is a fast track to unhappiness. Makes you blind to your own achievements and feel like you're not good enough. Story 47. Striving for perfectionism. Chasing perfection is exhausting and futile. It robs you of joy from the process and makes you feel like nothing is ever good enough. Story 48. People-pleasing. Putting everyone else's needs above your own may seem selfless, but it drains energy and can lead to resentment. Story 49. Seeking constant approval. When your self-worth depends on others' approval, you hand over control of your happiness to other people. Story 50. Holding in sneezes. Seems polite not to make noise, but sneezing creates pressure. Holding it in can damage ears, throat, or even blood vessels. Story 51. Using scented candles in poorly ventilated rooms. Many candles are made from paraffin, which releases toxic fumes into the air when burned. Story 52. Constantly listening to music at full volume. In 30 minutes, you can permanently damage your hearing, and hearing loss is linked to brain problems in older adults. Story 53. Sedentary lifestyle. The average adult sits for 6.5 hours a day, and all this chair time negatively affects the brain and is linked to changes in areas important for memory. Story 54. Lack of social interaction. Isolation can lead to cognitive decline. You need to maintain meaningful relationships for brain health. Story 55. Lack of sleep. 1/3 of adults don't get the recommended 7-8 hours of sleep. Cognitive skills deteriorate when people sleep less than 7 hours. Story 56. Chronic stress. Constant tension raises cortisol levels, which lowers immunity, bone density, and increases pressure and weight. Story 57. Slouching when walking. How we walk affects our mood. Slouched shoulders and minimal arm movements lead to worse moods. Story 58. Constantly taking photos instead of enjoying the moment. Focusing on creating the perfect shot can rob you of truly experiencing and remembering the event. Story 59. Tolerating workplace bullying. About 35% of employees face bullying at work, which can be devastating to self-esteem and mental health. Story 60. Avoiding physical activity. If you become active 3 times a week, depression risk decreases by 19%. Each time you're active, depression risk decreases by 6%. Story 61. Holding grudges and refusing to forgive. This weighs you down more than you think. Constantly replaying past hurts keeps you in a cycle of negativity. Story 62. Negative self-talk. How you talk to yourself shapes your perception of the world. When your inner voice is harsh or critical, it undermines self-esteem. Story 63. Having rigid expectations in relationships. When we approach relationships with expectations and they're not met, we get angry and upset. Story 64. Interrupting others during conversation. This creates resentment in relationships and shows disrespect. In a noisy world, everyone fights for attention. Story 65. Habit of judgment and criticism. When you project negativity onto everything around you, you create a crappy experience for yourself. Story 66. Dependence on social media validation. Constantly checking likes and comments can lead to anxiety and low self-esteem. Story 67. Postponing important decisions. Indecision often stems from fear of making the wrong choice, but this can lead to missed opportunities. Story 68. Habit of saying yes to all requests. Inability to say no leads to overwork and feeling like you're being used. Story 69. Avoiding conflicts at any cost. While conflicts are unpleasant, avoiding them can lead to problems accumulating that later explode. Story 70. Constant multitasking. Trying to do several things at once reduces productivity and increases stress. Story 71. Ignoring your needs for others. Constantly sacrificing your needs can lead to burnout and resentment. Story 72. Habit of pessimism. Constantly expecting the worst creates a negative mindset and can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Story 73. Comparing your failures to others' successes. This is a distorted perception of reality because people rarely show their struggles on social media. Story 74. Habit of self-sabotage. Often stems from fear of success or lack of self-belief. Procrastination and negative thoughts about yourself limit potential. Story 75. Avoiding responsibility. Dodging accountability may seem easier in the short term but creates bigger problems in the future. Story 76. Gossiping about others. Spreading rumors creates a toxic environment and undermines trust. It reflects poorly on you. Story 77. Habit of emotional eating. Using food to cope with stress or emotions can lead to health problems and feelings of guilt. Story 78. Avoiding new challenges. Staying in your comfort zone may seem safe, but it prevents personal growth and development. Story 79. Constantly checking news. While it's important to be informed, constantly consuming negative news can increase anxiety and stress. Story 80. Habit of extreme judgments. Seeing the world only in black and white without considering nuances limits understanding and creates unnecessary conflicts.